give you intelligent decisions. And of course, these are all examples of large items, but unfortunately, if we are not careful enough, we will also experience lots of smaller smart items like the smart dust that several people are proposing to include in our future food so that they can trace the food consumption by humans. Not very exciting, but and I hope it will not go ahead as an idea. And the last characteristic that I would like to talk about in the future internet is that all that will bring about new challenges for regulation and ethics. You see, we will be able to create our own personal memory space on our mobile telephone in a few years' time. In fact, we are more or less able to do that now, and we will be able to share that personal memory space with others. Are we ready to regulate such an environment? I think not, and one of the reasons is that regulation evolves at a much slower pace than technology does. And this is something we cannot help. It's a fact, and therefore we need to be as proactive as possible. And the other conclusion I would like to point out here is that privacy and security must be built into every service of the network since the design phase. Now, this is not new. Security experts, we've been shouting about that necessity since the scientific area of security was recognized as a self-standing one. But it has taken at least 20 years it took 20 years for that belief to be actually embedded into the manufacturers' minds. I hope it won't take 20 years again to achieve that reality in the future internet. So what are the security challenges? The first challenge is the architecture. And what we need to do here is to ensure that the number of diverse technical components with increasing complexity and with less intelligence than what we experience today will be flexible and secure. The second thing that is a challenge in the future internet is the preservation of societal values, and at least these are common in European countries. It is absolutely certain that we will experience new threats and new risks because of the changing technology and because of the use of the technology. And that means that we should be looking into issues related to privacy, transparency, accountability, open and fair operation of the future internet, as well as competitiveness of the services market. Now, a big question which will not be resolved easily, and I think it will always remain a question, is the question of how much security should we have versus how much privacy we should have. And there are people who believe that this is a zero-sum game, meaning that more security means less privacy and vice versa. But my personal view and the view of others is that security and privacy are not, well, they are competitive to each other, but this is not a zero-sum game. Security in the future internet should not get in the way. We experience that a lot today, because today security does impede efficiency sometimes and user acceptance, and therefore it is not used. This should not happen in the future internet, and we don't have answers about how to do that. And also, we should be looking at issues like usability, the economics of security and privacy, user awareness, user education, and computer and security literacy of the people that will be asked to use the future internet. Finally, the last challenge is how to align the value protection with future internet models. By that I mean that now we all know the connectionless versus the connection-oriented model in the telecommunications world and the computing or the networking world versus what we expect the model of operation to be in the future internet, which will be a value-based model of operation. My slide one before last is about the future trusted internet, and this is because actually in security we are experiencing a paradigm shift. We've been doing that in the past few years. In fact, we've gone from the era where we were building a fortress around our information and communication systems, trying to keep the bad guys out and let the good guys in, something which of course relies on the assumption that you know beforehand who the bad guys are and who the good guys are. So we are moving into an era of open systems, of systems we don't know beforehand who are the legitimate users of and who are not the legitimate users of. And therefore all these systems should rely more on the concept of trust. Now this is something difficult because, as you know, the traditional internet as opposed to the future internet was built with anything but trust in mind, and this is simply because when it was conceived, trust was implicit, as the users of the internet when it was conceived were trusted entities anyway. The way it evolved was completely different, of course. And the last three bullets of the slide are just items that the security community, at least in Europe, sees as important in research issues regarding the future trusted internet. And just the titles of them: protection of user credentials and privacy-friendly identity management, protection of nodes and devices against misconfiguration and malware, including intrusion detection systems for low-power networks, low-power node networks, and trust in communication as well as in the processing of data. And these are research priorities that have found their way in the work programs, the relevant work programs of the European Commission. As I promised, this is my last slide, and obviously this was not my personal wisdom, but an amalgamation of things that you can find. And I really recommend to you these two reports. The first one relates to the future internet. It's a very recent one, issued in May 2009, and the second one is a position paper which has evolved into a report of the Think Trust project of the European Union, which has as a task to define a roadmap for security issues in the next 10 years or so. So, I do hope that I kept my promise. Thank you very much for your attention.